Hello, everybody, and welcome to tennisplayer.net. I'm Joel Drucker, the executive editor, and we are delighted to bring you on our podcast a very exciting show with a tennis legend I've known and watched play for many years. Brian Teacher, welcome to tennisplayer.net.
Hey, thank you, Joel. Thanks for having me.
Well, Brian here has written for our issue a tremendous story about footwork. And one of the things that's interesting about this, about footwork and Brian, I watched Brian play for decades, back to when he was at UCLA and onto the Pro Tour. Brian was the John Isner of his time. His game seemed to come down from the sky. He had this incredible serve, and it took him to number 7 in the world. He won the Australian Open in 1980, and since retiring, he's gone on to be a coach working with all sorts of players, from Grand Slam finalists like Greg Ruzetsky to many, many nationally ranked juniors, college-bound players. So, Brian, this story on footwork, I've read dozens of stories about footwork in my life, but this one gets at it in a way that I almost consider revolutionary and kind of fundamental. So why don't you just dig into it and really talk to me about what you're trying to address in this piece?
Well, thank you, first of all. So, what I see is, in whether it's a college player or even guys that are on the tour that aren't, at the pinnacle level of the tour. And by the way, I'm helping a lot of guys through remote coaching with my app and technology. We can talk about that. But the whole thing was what I wanted to address, that this problem is not just in developing juniors, that it exists still at the pro level. They're still trying to figure it out, not at the pinnacle level, but even at the pro level, this is an issue. And what it is that people talk about footwork a lot. And so you can see coaches like, they'll do drills for footwork, right? And those are all great to increase your foot speed and to be able to run faster and stronger and move your feet. But the reality is, if your swings don't match up with your feet, it's how to get your feet to load the swing. You have to load your backhand, your forehand, your volleys. Everything has to be connected to your swing, because your feet is what delivers it. And if your swings are off with your feet, you'll always have mistiming. You'll never be consistent. You'll never have the same power. It's impossible. If you look at all the top players, you see this like seamless. It's almost like a dance, that everything, they look like machines. If you watch Alcaraz, Sinner, Novak, whoever it is, Nadal, they're always looking like a machine. That's because it's a formula with their feet and their swings. It's all tied in. And so what I was trying to do is to educate people, like, of the different type of loading mechanisms. So in other words, how the medicine ball is so good with just loading your shoulders and moving your feet. And there's a
How big a
lot.
medicine ball? It's a 3-pound medicine ball. It's not a 19-pound medicine ball.
Oh, you start with a medicine ball that's not so heavy, right? And then you just work with, so it's working with your feet and loading. And so the important part of the medicine ball is to get the shoulders to move with the feet, to get the shoulders to move, and the lag. And that lag of the medicine ball, that slot that it goes in, so that it's not hanging out in front of you, but then when you load back and it goes into the slot. And that's kind of like your backhand and your forehand, right? So that the torso can come around with the hips and deliver that power with your feet. And that's so important, basically.
There's a
And
great point you made about how T-ball, like, take
right.
back to a child when they're 8, 10, 9 years old and learning to swing. Talk about that, and maybe you can juxtapose it with a concept you brought about slashing, which is a
Right.
problem.
Well, okay. Well, it has to do with the medicine ball net, but in general, yeah, in general, when you go out and you see most coaches trying to teach kids how to play, that it's the racket, and they're pitching the ball, and they're trying to just arm the ball. But yes, they're developing some hand-eye coordination, but they're not developing any loading or footwork or understanding the stability of their feet and their torso and how it works together. Whereas at least if you do T-ball, you're understanding your torso has to load, right? You have to load, and you have to push your feet into the ground and turn and load and uncoil. That's the basics for tennis, basically. And then from the T-ball, you go into medicine ball, which gets that kind of that lag and that 45-degree angle of loading and then coming out to hit the ball. So, and everything is related. It's not just the medicine ball, the loading, not only, it's the combination with the feet. so that you move your feet. You take a few steps, you load and you unload, and it's all your feet doing it, right? So you can simulate like a little bit like you're playing. By the way, I've seen all these guys do it. Even the pros do it still today. A lot of them, you'll see them either simulate shadow playing or medicine ball. Now, we talked about, I said in the article, or I've said in a bunch of articles, that a lot of times I see kids playing, and I ask them to demonstrate their forehand, and they they demonstrate their forehand. It's almost universal, Joel. You can just ask any kid; it's almost universal, and you'll see them generate the forehand, and they'll whip that racket head through so fast they have no idea whatsoever how the racket face is supposed to how the racket face is supposed to stay flat through the ball to compress the ball through his back. You all see them slashing through like they have a lightsaber of like a whip. And so because the coaches are so focused on this like whippiness, that there's no context of how you stay on the ball to control the ball. And so then because you're whipping it, then you're not really feeling it with your feet either. You're not feeling the pressure. It should be a lag of compression and unloading with the kind of sine wave of the medicine ball. But you have to keep the platform so you're not moving your arm like that through the ball. You get the appearance when you watch the top guys play that they're doing that, but when you slow it down, you see you have to look at the sequence basically of the hips uncoiling, the torso, and the shoulder, and then when they make contact, the shoulder comes through, and then they brush up and through. It just happens all so quickly that they see the image of boom. It's just like this explosion. And by the way, a lot of coaches teach you that. I hear a lot of coaches, hey, more racket head speed, more racket head speed. And so you develop this thing. Well, show me your swing, and it looks like a light, like they're like on Star Wars.
What's the drill? All right, so we're back on the court. I'm a 14-year-old and I want to play well at the sectionals or the Easter Bowl or whatever. What's the drill that my coach and I should do to get me? It sounds like you're talking about either, if not slowing down or getting more clear. What's the drill routine that I do to learn to do this properly?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Even if you have to learn how to stay on the ball to compress it, to control it. So you see a lot of guys are whippy now. It's funny. I was working with the number one kid at Occidental right now yesterday, and he hits a nice forehand. But when he plays like the top guys in the league, their forehands are better. And it's because basically he comes off the ball too soon. He whips and comes off the ball, and he's not good at basically penetrating through the court. You have to be able to penetrate through the last percentage of the court. Otherwise, if you have too much top and the ball short, it doesn't matter. A good player is going to destroy you, right? You have to be able to learn how to penetrate, and that's by staying on the ball and compressing through it with your legs and your torso. I mean, part of it is like, so we were doing something yesterday. It was just like, okay, just come here in the alley and I want you just to bounce the ball and hit your forehand, and let's see how you can make it go straight every time, like it's on a line. Most guys can't do that because they're like doing too much arm movement, right? And so you have to be able to direct it and pull the swing through with your legs and your torsos, and it starts with the legs and then the torso, and then the arm is just kind of connected to the platform. But if it gets ahead of the sequence, then you break your wrist through too soon, right? And then you lose the compression and the control. And that's what you're seeing today.
You go back a little in time to someone who you played and you beat a couple of times, like a Jimmy Connors, who you've talked to me about his footwork being excellent that way and ability to stay on the ball and really drive it, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I watch these guys play, and then I played with Vitas when he was we were the same age, and then he was already on the tour, and when I was still in college, he was already top 10 in the
He's
world.
Vitas, right?
We were pretty close as juniors, and then I played him when I was still in college, and he was in Philadelphia playing the National Indoors, and played, and he just kicked my butt, and it wasn't so much that he didn't overpower me with anything. He just the ball was always on the strings, and he always stayed on the ball, right? This was when we had wooden rackets, so technique was completely different. But I'm just saying, in general, his swings were all tied into his feet, basically. And I noticed that my swings were all over the place. Look at that. Yeah.
So
And
you're using a wood racket, and right, and the racket head's a little smaller, but still maybe should all right
but it
should
was a feat. So basically, when I'm watching Connors play, it's the same thing. Well, what does he do so well? He's got amazing footwork, and it's all tied in with his swings. He had incredible balance, and so you try to emulate that balance and that footwork and say, "Oh yeah, this is what he's doing. I can do that." So it's not. I think the kids today, they look at it like they're just kind of like exploding and hitting hard, but you got to break it down. That's why I think technology is so important. Like I have the Full Court Tennis app, right? It's on iOS, it's agnostic on the
let's talk
website.
about that. Let's talk about the full court tennis app so people know a little more about what that does and how that can help them, build properly.
Absolutely. So it's a free download on iOS and it's agnostic on the website. So you don't have to have a device. But if you have the app, you can take a video and instantly on the court, I have a pro library on it that I own some rights to of some of the players' images. You can rent the player images, but you can compare it side by side to guys like Jerome, Fritz, Nakashima, Steve Johnson, who was a top 20 player on the tour, a bunch of other guys, and so you can actually see and break it down what they're doing versus what you're doing. And so I kind of look at it like, if you had a baking contest, Joel, and you had 10 of the best chefs in the world, and you said, I want you guys to bake the best chocolate cake in the world, and we're going to see who wins. Well, the bottom line is they're all going to bake a chocolate cake, right? But it's going to have different flavorings, different textures, different styles, right? And a tennis stroke is basically the same. Okay, you look at the grip, whatever the player is using for that grip, and you look at a few strokes, and their styles are a little different, but the essential ingredients are basically the same. And so the full court tennis allows you to look at those essential ingredients compared to other pros and yourself and pull them out and study them. And so there's no reason to have weird technology today, right? And you can load a match up. You can load a match. You can take a full match and load it up on the system. You can hire a coach to get an opinion on it, on what you're doing. You can tag certain areas, easily tag them like chapters, and ask the coach to analyze them. And so what happens is we see also that footwork is tied into spacing. And what's happened in the game today is when we're watching players play, you go out to UCLA, you go out to anywhere, and you watch most college tennis. 99% of U.S. players are doing this today, unless they're at a high level. Is that from the time, and this is what you can do in my system, you see him hit the ball, the opponent hit the ball because you're looking down court, you're taping the match. And you can zoom in and you can watch when the opponent hits the ball, how much lag time is it before the person in the forecourt, the closest to the camera, actually moves his feet and adjusting. And you'll see over and over again that the ball's crossing that. It's almost already bouncing and the guy's barely moving a step or two. And then they're kind of loading and hitting one side to the eye. Very seldom do you see guys that they're spacing the ball properly. They see the ball, they pick it up in their eyes, and their brain is moving to calculate how to get around and get up in the most efficient way. If it's deep, they get back like an overhead and still get around and get up so they can be as aggressive as possible within the framework of what type of shot it is, right? Because even when somebody's on offense, you have to play the best defense you can, right? You can't just play complete defense and just poop the ball back, or you're going to get killed by a good player. So you still have to be able to get around and get up through the ball with your legs. And that's why the swings have to be tied into the legs. And you can't be successful unless they are.
So what's a drill? What's a drill that you recommend that a player can do to kind of begin to refine this technique? I mean, it's some real. What I loved about this article, and there's a great story you tell about what it takes to really throw a frisbee, to really have a frisbee go over a 20-foot fence, and how we've got to load, and there's something different than just using our fine motor skills. Really getting. I mean, the unsung hero of tennis is this lower body. So what are some practice routines that a player can do to try to build this skill?
Well, for let's say a one-handed backhand, for instance, like you have to be able to, if you can throw a frisbee well, what is throwing a frisbee? It's very similar to a one-handed backhand. Okay, you lock your wrist right here, right, to throw the frisbee, and if you want to throw it far, you got to start moving your feet and turning, right?
A lot.
And then basically you're loading your torso on your back leg while you're moving, and then you're moving and uncoiling it like you do a backhand, a one-handed backhand. Because if to hit a good one-handed backhand, it's not just waiting. You got to move your feet, turn and coil and uncoil with your legs. And to throw a frisbee well, it's pretty much the same thing. And you load up, you get down in the slot, which is kind of like the medicine ball. You get up and down, and it's that loop that gives you that. And it's the wrist back. If you let it go too soon, it's not going to go in a good direction, right?
You mean like Stan Wawrinka, for example, like Stan Wawrinka, like he does that.
Yeah, everybody that's got a good one hand. By the way, everybody that's got a good one-handed backhand. You can look at, I don't know, Tsitsipas, any of these guys.
But then you talked about the perils. You had a very good point about the perils of someone who had a good one-handed backhand who won the U.S. Open in Dominic Thiem. Why don't you give me a thought?
Well, okay, so I mentioned Dominic Thiem. So I mean, I always greatly admired him. He's like he was an incredible athlete, and I mean, my gosh, great player and stuff. But I'd watch his forehand, and I'd always think, gosh, his forehand's a little strange. He puts so much topspin on it, but he doesn't penetrate that well with it. But he's considered to have a top forehand. And then, of course, he injured himself with his wrist, right? And I started studying his swings, and I noticed that his feet are pretty flat when he hits the ball. And so because they're so flat, if you look at it and digitally slow it down, which you can in full court tennis, you see that he puts so much emphasis and snap on his arm and wrist. You start saying, oh my God, this is why he hurt his wrist, I think. I mean, he's not using his legs to get through the ball. He's just using his incredible arm and wrist speed just to snap the crap out of the ball. And he did. And he put tremendous amount of spin on it. But I would say, if Dominic Thiem was playing today, if he played a forehand to forehand with Alcaraz or Sinner or like Fritz, there's no way he could keep up with that
This is
forehand.
someone who just won the U.S. Open 5 years ago. So this speaks to the way that the game evolves, but also to the skills a player needs. I mean, the players that you earlier talked about Novak, you talked about Jimmy Connors, the sustainable career, the career that lasts for 10, 15,
So
even
they don't hurt themselves.
yeah,
I firmly believe, and I think if you looked at that forehand and you slowed it down, you would see that it's not that efficient because he's not using his legs. He's waiting for the ball with flat feet. I would say from what I've seen, probably 80 to 90% of the time that he doesn't move his feet up and move his legs through the ball. Okay, and so if you look at the top players today, you see their footwork is always moving, and then they plant and load and they go through the ball. It's all seamless.
like Sinner. Like Sinner is
Like Sinner, like Alcaraz. Even like Fritz today is doing it better. His footwork Fritz learned this on the tour to move up and through the ball. He's gotten better. If you notice, everybody said Taylor Hay doesn't move that well. He's always waiting for the ball. And you see he's moving his feet a lot better. He can still move them better, there's no question, but he improved amazingly. But he had to learn it on the tour, and he's so competitive that he picked up on it, right? He's
well, it's kind of like sink or swim.
competitor.
It's a little bit like sink or swim when you're on the tour. You either get going.
Yeah, exactly, right. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse, basically.
Yeah, because the game is brutal. But so are there some things? Some of the concept of this are very visual. You're talking about the flight control room and the cockpit and this notion of how we're loading, and our game is like an airplane.
Well, in a sense, if the return is serve, you are like in a cockpit, man. It's like you got these missiles coming at you, today on the tour, 130, 150 miles an hour, right? That's like kind of like in tennis, it's a missile, right? So
Sure.
I have unbelievable balance, right? And the balance has to be tied into your feet and your swings. So in other words, if you have too much motion on return to serve, you see a lot of guys that they'll take a step and a hop. And you see a lot of juniors that do that. Well, if the serve's coming, Joel, at 130 miles an hour, you have about a third of a second from when they hit it to when it bounces with the length of the court. So if you're taking a step and a hop, how are you going to be in balance to be able to reset, to pivot, and get your racket back? So if you look at Djokovic, for instance, he's probably, a prime example of the simplest and most, amazing footwork balance that you can have. But it's very simple. So what he does is he sees the ball before the ball. He's seen the ball pretty early out of the strings of the opponent. When the ball crosses the net, he's already gotten his whatever it is. If it's for a forehand, he's already pivoted his right foot, and his racket is already back at a 45-degree angle. And the same with his backhand. The shoulders are across, the left foot's out, and he's pivoted seamlessly. So that's why related to a cockpit, you've got to be ready for that incoming missile, right? And if it's just a fraction of a second, a third of a second is a fraction of a second. If you're not ready and that's not back, if your foot's not across and your shoulders aren't back, you don't have a good chance to hit a decent return. You're going to arm the ball, and then you push from your back leg to the front leg to help bring you through. That's what makes it simple, but yet it's kind of based all on physics.
So before I want to wrap up shortly, but what's the practice routine you can do? You talked about, do you look in the mirror? Do you have someone throw you missiles? What do you do?
You can do it all. I mean, you can do it all. I mean, basically, I would think that when you're looking in the mirror, if you're going to do a shadow in the mirror, you have to at least make sure that your foot sequence are the same, so that basically when you address the ball, if you notice the top players, when they address the ball, typically they move their feet up and around the ball. So if you're a right-hander, you address the ball with your right foot, you're up in your initial coil, right? And so you address the ball with the right foot steps to address the ball, and your left foot goes forward to the side, and your arm is loaded back. And that's basically the sequence of the footwork, right? So you have to be able to move around the ball, and every time that sequence has to be the same. And it's kind of the same in mirror on the backhand, so that your footwork, so that the initial coil is there and your feet are moving. Then when you address the ball with your left foot for a backhand, right? If you're a two-hander, you coil your body more, and then you step with your front leg forward, you're loaded. Everything is so your feet load the swing and your feet unload the swing, which is exactly like the medicine ball. If you're moving and throwing the medicine ball, it's the same thing. It's the same footwork. It's the same unloading. Exactly the same. It's just then you have the swing, but it's the same tempo too. When you do the medicine ball, you don't jerk your arms out of the way. You let the tempo be the same, right? And that's what a lot of kids today, they don't let the tempo be the same. They have this thing that the coaches, and they see more speed. And so all their swings are out of tempo, and they're not locked into their feet. And so you'll never be able to control the ball if you're out of tempo.
And you need to get that kind of groundedness, that moving around the ball. It's funny, I was talking to someone else recently about a whole thing about how we organize ourselves to get around the ball to be in a position to hit it. And that requires footwork and tremendous discipline. Tremendous discipline.
Well, I think the other thing is, I have to say, is that, the coaching bodies in this country have not done a great job with implementing this like they have with European and other countries in the world. And I think they dropped the ball. And so I think it's a real problem in U.S. tennis that has to be addressed, because until we start coaching better, it's hard for players to learn to do it if they're not coached that way from a young age.
More footwork, less hitting. I mean, sometimes people think about the game as hitting, and your thing gets to, before you can hit, you got to know how to move. Then you'll hit.
Not just move. You got to know how to space the ball, and you want to get up to like a 45-degree angle. Every shot is around to unload through the shot, right? It's about the spacing and the distance from the ball to move your feet, not just about moving your feet. And that's why, it's so funny. I'm talking about a guy that I worked remotely. I won't say his name, but he was like 184. He's now 122 in about 6 months, only from remote coaching. He says, I was showing him his feet because he thought he wanted his feet to be like Thiem. He thought that guy would have I said, no. I said, you're waiting for the ball. Your feet are flat. Watch all the top players. They're all moving up and through the ball with their feet from one foot to the other. They're planting. They're not waiting for the ball to come to them. And so it's about, he thought he's moving his feet, but you're moving up and through the ball and transferring the energy. Just like if you went to throw the medicine ball and your feet stopped, you wouldn't do a very good job of throwing the medicine ball. It's the same.
Tremendous. Well, this has been great. The article is called Building World-Class Footwork, the Substance of the Flow. Brian Teacher, founder of Full Court Tennis. I want to thank you, Brian. Thanks for taking time, and look for this article on tennisplayers.net. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Thanks, Joel.